Julius Malema, leader of the economic freedom fighters, has repeatedly drawn attention to what he describes as a striking and uncomfortable contradiction in South Africa. The state provides for those it imprisons, while many law-abiding poor citizens, especially young people, face daily basic shortages. His point is not merely rhetorical. He uses specific comparisons to make a political and moral argument about priorities, inequality, and the responsibilities of government. One of Malema's most repeated examples is meals. He points out that prisoners are guaranteed 3 meals a day. Meanwhile, many unemployed young people and households endure hunger and food insecurity. The comparison is meant to shock and to force listeners to ask whether public resources and policy choices match public need. Malema also contrasts uniforms and shelter behind bars with the conditions in informal settlements and underserved neighborhoods. Detainees receive state-issued clothing and a secure enclosed place to sleep. By contrast, many citizens live in overcrowded shacks with fragile structures and uncertain protection from weather or crime. This comparison highlights a visible disparity between what the state provides to those it punishes and what it provides to those it serves. Access to basic services is another pillar of Malema's critique. He notes that many prisons have functioning toilets, electricity, and basic sanitation, and in some remarks he has contrasted that with townships and settlements where flushing toilets, continuous electricity, and reliable water are inconsistent or absent. He has even stated bluntly that some areas, naming Alexandra, are worse off than prison. Those stark contrasts are used to question the effectiveness and equity of service delivery. Education and rehabilitation programs for inmates form another element of his argument. Malema argues it is a contradiction that the state funds rehabilitation, training, and sometimes access to education for prisoners, while many young South Africans cannot afford university registration fees or are forced out of school by financial pressure. In his view, offering pathways back to society for offenders is important, but not when it happens against a backdrop of millions of young people denied basic educational opportunity. Importantly, Malema frames these comparisons not as an attack on prisoners as people, but as an indictment of policy choices and priorities. He emphasizes human dignity across the board and argues that addressing poverty and unemployment should be the state's primary focus. His tone is populist and confrontational by design. He wants public urgency and political will redirected toward the most vulnerable citizens. From this perspective, Malema has proposed structural changes, including the introduction of a permanent unemployment grant to guarantee an income floor for those without work. He says an EFF government would prioritize improving living conditions for law-abiding citizens over maintaining comfortable conditions for those behind bars. That pledge is part of a broader political platform aimed at reducing inequality and expanding social welfare. Critics counter that prisons must meet minimum standards and that comparisons can oversimplify complex budget and policy realities. Supporters say such comparisons serve to highlight moral contradictions and to press for radical policy reform. Either way, Malema's recurring message speaks to a broader national debate about social justice, public spending, and who benefits from state provision. As South Africa continues to grapple with poverty, unemployment, and unequal access to services, these arguments are likely to remain part of the public conversation. Whether one agrees or disagrees with the specifics, the core issue Malema raises, how to balance the needs of the vulnerable with the responsibilities of the state, remains a central question for policymakers and citizens alike. Observers say the comparison is effective because it translates abstract inequality into everyday terms people understand. By pointing to food, clothing, and basic sanitation, Malema forces a conversation about dignity, budget choices, and political will. For proponents, the comparison serves as a moral indictment and a call to action. For opponents, it is a rhetorical device that blurs important distinctions. Regardless, the exchange underlines the urgent need for planning, social policy, and investment to ensure that no citizen is left with living conditions worse than those the state provides to anyone confined.